Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me on this Tuesday. If you've taken some time out of your busy schedules to support my channel by hitting that subscribe or like button, I really do appreciate you for that. All right, so fall has a couple different portions. As that water begins to cool off, it seems like the fishing gets better. A lot of those baits that you may not want to try earlier in the fall really start to play. Basically, everything becomes a factor as we get into the cooler water temps like they do in the spring. When you have that below 60-degree water temp, it really sparks the fish and they start to bite. So if I could explain fall fishing a couple different ways, I'm going to go into how important is bait selection, how important is the area of the lake that you're fishing in, and how important is the pattern, spots you're fishing, and all of that matter. Because I feel like some parts of the year, area of the lake isn't super important. If I think of the post spawn, I think of timing. It's spring, so there are a lot of fish around you, and getting your boat in the right areas at the right times is crucial. Now, do you need to be up the river, down the lake? Everything kind of plays that time of year. Obviously, if the fish have went out deep and you're only looking shallow, then you're going to struggle in the post spawn. But post spawn for me, I never really feel like area of the lake is the most crucial. Now, as we get into the fall, area of the lake can mean everything. The down portion of your lake sometimes may not have anything going on. You may be down there with the right bait. You might be fishing the right type of spots that would be working further up the lake and not catch anything. That's just the reality of fall fishing. So I want to go into basically my approach in September and how it changes moving into October as the fishing gets better. And this will carry on into November. And there's some really weird things that happen with the water temperature. Like when you think of the springtime, a drastic cold front comes in, you have really severe temperature drops. You may have water that is close to 60 degrees. You have a really bad cold front, long one, last couple days, and then it chills your water off into the high 40s. Well, that is going to do a lot to the fish. If you have fish that are swimming around out in the abyss and they're getting ready to pull up and you just don't have warm temperature, you have no sun, those fish are going to stay out there. Those shallow areas, they may have fish in them already because of the prior warming trend, but they're not going to replenish if you have nasty conditions and cold water. Now, as we get into the fall, that water is cooling off. The days are getting shorter, less sunlight, and we are getting cooler air temps. But unlike the spring or the winter time, the fishing tends to get better with cooler water, and you don't have those temperature drops like you do earlier in the year. Once the water, and I don't know the scientific reason behind this, but once the water as a whole on your lake is warm for so long, it takes a lot less, or a lot more time rather, to cool it off. So if you have freezing nights, it could snow, it's not going to chill your water off in the fall time, October, November, like it does January and February. So that's very critical, because when you don't have a big temperature drop like you do earlier in the year, you can still catch them on top water. If you have northern strain fish in your lake, they will still bite at top water even when the water drops like super cold. You hear about guys saying that you can catch them on a buzzbait when it's 51 degrees. That is very likely to happen in November, December. Bass are still going to be chasing bait, therefore they're going to come up to the top and eat bait. Now in the winter, January, February months, you have a drastic temperature spike. It's not going to, fish aren't going to be still swimming around biting good. It's going to be really tough. So that's one thing I've seen in the fall where, oh man, better rig up a jerkbait and rig up a finesse jig, because they're not going to know. In the fall, even with snow and ice and all that, the water just doesn't cool off very quickly. Now, let's go back to your baits, your part of the lake, and your technique or your pattern, whatever you want to call it, the places you're fishing, because those are the three parts to bass fishing, correct? Now, in September, I cut out the whole part about finding the perfect bait, because here's what happens to me a lot early fall when you still have water that's 80 degrees. The days are getting shorter, the fish are realizing that it is time to start making a push and move and all that, but the water's still hot. So they don't necessarily want to be swimming all over the lake, which makes it difficult. So when I think of September, early fall, the portion of the lake is the most important. There's going to be a part of the lake that fishes really well, and most of the lake is going to be fishing really tough. So to better my odds, I just cut out the entire perfect bait, 12 rods on the deck. I typically have like 2 or 3 rods. There's a lot of available, cover and stuff to fish in your lake. Then pick one bait that's going to suit that and just roll with it. September for me is usually pretty one-dimensional. If it's the lake with grass in it, some type of grass bait. If it's a frog or flippin' or a chatterbait or something like that. If it's a lake that has a lot of submerged trees in it, it's going to be a flippin' bite. So for me, all those other baits, I don't even waste my time. I'm picking one bait, and then I'm going to cover the entire lake, because portion of the lake for me in September is the most important. And I can just kind of bank on going shallow, because typically there is a population of fish that live shallow year round. So basically I'm cutting out 2/3 of the guesswork, and I'm just going with find the right area of the lake, one bait, roll the dice. If that doesn't work, that's not the reason I didn't catch them. There's a lot of reasons that you're not going to catch them in September. So don't worry so much about the bait, and don't worry so much about basically the pattern you're going to be on. Just go fish cover and roll with it. Cover the entire lake. That's the most important. As we get into October, that changes. It seems like all the baits start to play again. As the water cools off, the fishing becomes better, and every bait in your tackle box is going to start to play. The cover is also going to change. The trees and stuff in the water will now have bait in them. They won't have bait in them. So that's going to be a big factor on which trees are good. Going back to September, it didn't really matter what trees. You just had to fish them all. Now, the ones that have bait in them. The same things with the grass. The grass is going to start breaking loose and dying. So not all the grass on your lake is going to be created equal. You're going to have some grass that's turning into mud. The fish are getting out of it. They don't want to be in it. Some of it, they do want to be in it. So you have to play with a bunch of different techniques. You can't just flip the outside edge of the grass now. You got to fish a frog. You got to throw a buzzbait on the edge. You got to cover water. There's a lot of things that you got to do in October. So October, the most important thing to me is now the bait selection and your technique. Now, the entire lake's not going to open back up in October. You're still going to have a portion of the lake. So finding the portion of the lake is very important, but you can do that with a lot of different baits, and you can do that with a lot of different patterns, and you have to check all those. So September to October. September, if you like one bait, you're really confident in that bait, just run with that. That can be fun if that's what you like to do. If you like throwing a bunch of different baits, you like to try a bunch of different patterns, October is a lot better for that. But that's how fishing changes. Water gets cooler, fishing does improve, but it's a big change. And if you try to take your September mentality to October, it's going to be a real struggle for you, because there's so many different things that are happening. You don't just need to look in, one little paint yourself in the corner type area and all that. You need to be venturing out, tying on all those topwaters, tying on all those jerk baits and all your subsurface baits. Give that a shot. Good luck to you guys, and I'll see you on the water.